If you log onto YouTube right now, you can probably find the TED Talk. It has over 15 million views. You will see a charismatic 30-something CEO pacing across a brightly lit stage in a minimalist black turtleneck, passionately explaining how his revolutionary artificial intelligence is going to fundamentally rewire the future of human commerce. You will watch the audience hang on his every manufactured word as he eloquently takes absolute undisputed credit for building a billion-dollar neural network from the ground up. But what the cameras didn't capture, and what the tech press conveniently ignores, is the terrifyingly cold reality of how that machine was actually built. My name is Elena. I am not the charismatic visionary pacing on the glowing stage. I am the phantom in the server room. For 5 years, I worked as the lead data architect for what is now the most aggressively valued tech unicorn in Silicon Valley. While the CEO, let's call him Alex, was busy drinking matcha lattes with venture capitalists on Sand Hill Road and practicing his stage presence, I was sitting in a freezing, windowless sub-basement, surrounded by the deafening hum of server cooling fans. I was the one writing the raw, bleeding-edge code. I was the one training the complex neural models to process millions of consumer data points in milliseconds. Alex was an exceptional salesman, but he fundamentally didn't understand the mathematics of his own product. He couldn't write a functional Python script if his life depended on it. But in the ruthless, ego-driven ecosystem of big tech, the men who know how to pitch always violently overshadow the women who actually know how to build. They treated me like a highly efficient silent compiler, a useful tool meant to process the data, generate the profit, and remain entirely invisible. They loved the billions of dollars my algorithm generated, but they arrogantly assumed that because I was quiet, I was also incredibly naive. That arrogant assumption would eventually cost them their entire empire. Because 3 years ago, I didn't just optimize their existing system. I wrote a proprietary predictive modeling sequence that was so terrifyingly advanced, it effectively gave the corporation the mathematical ability to see the financial future. It was the absolute holy grail of machine learning. And that is exactly when the corporate mask slipped and the founder decided to completely steal the foundation of my life's work. If you are watching this right now, and you have ever watched someone else take the credit, the equity, and the applause for a system you built with your own hands, do not look away. Because I am about to show you exactly how I took a stolen algorithm and used it to trigger a catastrophic, irreversible collapse of the very network that tried to erase me. Welcome back to Scores and Silk. Hit that subscribe button right now because today, the Phantom is crashing the system.
It was the eve of our initial public offering. The company was officially being valued at a staggering $4 billion. The corporate headquarters was vibrating with that intoxicating, frenetic Silicon Valley energy. Expensive pop-up champagne bars were being assembled in the glass lobby, and Alex was busy practicing his IPO roadshow pitch behind closed doors. I wasn't invited to the champagne toast. I was underground in the server room, running the final multi-threaded stress tests on the predictive architecture to ensure the platform didn't catastrophically crash when the opening bell rang on Wall Street. During a routine security audit of the executive servers, I had to bypass a firewall alert to clear a redundant data log. To do that, I had to temporarily route through the secure legal directory. And sitting right there, unencrypted on the private drive, was the finalized S1 filing, the official, heavily guarded document submitted to the federal SEC to take the company public. I opened the file, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Section 4, Intellectual Property. The exact mathematical architecture of the predictive model, the hundreds of thousands of lines of proprietary code I had personally written, debugged, and optimized over 5 agonizing years was officially registered with the Patent Office as the sole undisputed creation of Alex. My name wasn't just casually omitted as the lead engineer. I was legally and surgically erased from the machine's DNA. But the betrayal didn't stop at the intellectual credit. I frantically scrolled down to the company's final capitalization table, the absolute master document that dictates exactly who gets rich when the company goes public. When I joined the startup as employee number 3, surviving on cold pizza and writing code out of a damp garage for below minimum wage, I was contractually promised a massive 4% equity stake. It was the only reason I had sacrificed the entire decade of my 20s to build his dream. But as I stared at the glowing monitor, my entire vesting schedule had been completely wiped out. Alex had deployed a brutal, predatory legal loophole, a hidden clause buried deep in a massive stack of mandatory corporate restructuring documents he had pressured the engineering team to sign a year prior. By technically dissolving the original LLC and silently transferring the digital assets to a brand new corporate holding company, my original early-stage equity options were instantly rendered void. He was about to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange and walk away with a personal net worth of $900 million, built entirely on the invisible back of my code. And I was about to walk away with a standard bi-weekly paycheck and a completely meaningless job title. I didn't scream. I didn't smash the server racks. I calmly downloaded the entire S1 legal file to a heavily encrypted external drive, locked my terminal, and took the elevator up to the executive floor to confront the man who had just stolen my entire financial future.
I walked into Alex's sprawling, glass-walled office overlooking the city skyline. He was standing by the window, adjusting the collar of his black turtleneck, admiring his reflection. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I walked directly to his minimalist desk and dropped the printed copy of the S1 filing and the erased cap table right in front of him. I demanded my equity. I demanded the legal recognition of my architecture. I expected panic. I expected him to scramble for an excuse. But that is the terrifying thing about Silicon Valley sociopaths. They don't panic. Alex didn't even blink. He looked at the documents, offered me a patronizing, pitying smile, and initiated a masterclass in corporate gaslighting. "Elena, you were being incredibly emotional and, frankly, a little irrational," he said, his voice dripping with practiced empathy. "You are a brilliant coder, yes, but you don't understand the macroeconomic complexities of taking a unicorn public. Investors don't buy code, they buy the vision, they buy the brand. The legal restructuring was absolutely necessary to secure our Series D funding. If you had just trusted the process, we would have taken care of you." He looked me dead in the eyes and calmly explained that my 5 years of relentless, life-consuming engineering was simply standard employee output. "I built the machine, Alex," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You just painted the box." As those words left my mouth, I noticed his hand casually slide into his pocket. He didn't break eye contact. He just gently tapped the screen of his smartphone twice. A second later, the phone in my pocket violently vibrated. Then my smartwatch beeped. I looked down. Every single screen I owned was instantly flashing a harsh red error message. "Critical error, credentials revoked, device wiped." While he was smiling at me, pretending to listen, he had silently triggered the executive administrative override. In less than 3 seconds, he had remotely wiped my company phone, severed my access to the internal servers, permanently locked me out of the proprietary codebase I had built from scratch, and invalidated my physical building badge. "As of this exact second, your employment is terminated with cause," Alex said, his voice instantly turning to ice. "You violated core security protocols by illegally accessing executive legal files. You are currently standing in a restricted zone." He picked up the printed S1 filing and dropped it into the shredder next to his desk. "Read your non-disclosure agreement on the way out, Elena. If you attempt to contact the press, the SEC, or any venture capital firm regarding this company, my legal team will personally ensure you never touch a keyboard in this valley again. We will brand you as a volatile, malicious security risk. You will be toxic." 2 massive corporate security guards entered the office. They didn't let me go back to the sub-basement to get my coat or my personal hard drives. I was escorted directly into the glass elevator and physically removed from the building,
abandoned on the sidewalk of Sand Hill Road. Alex firmly believed he had executed a flawless surgical corporate assassination. He successfully stole the algorithm, neutralized the threat, and locked me out of the entire digital infrastructure. He thought he had severed my connection to the machine forever, but he fundamentally misunderstood how a true architect builds a network.
I stood on the blistering pavement outside the glass headquarters, watching the automatic doors slide shut behind me. For the first 24 hours, the devastating reality of losing a $100 million equity stake felt like a physical weight violently crushing my chest. Alex had successfully stolen the algorithm, triggered the IPO, and permanently exiled me from my own kingdom. But as I sat in my dark apartment that night, illuminated only by the harsh blue light of my backup monitor, the panic slowly evaporated. It was replaced by a terrifyingly cold, absolute clarity. Alex had stolen the compiled code. He possessed the functioning billion-dollar engine. But he was a salesman. He fundamentally didn't understand the underlying physics of the machine he was about to drive. He had the map, but he didn't know the terrain. He didn't realize that 3 years ago, when I laid the very first foundational blocks of the neural architecture, I didn't just build a linear processor. I engineered a highly specific, complex mathematical blind spot deep within the core routing matrix. It wasn't malware. It wasn't a vindictive virus. It was a highly sensitive algorithmic load balancer, a ghost protocol that required my exact continuous manual calibration to prevent a catastrophic server overflow when the platform inevitably scaled past a certain data velocity. To Alex's arrogant legal team, the code looked flawless, but to the architect, it was a ticking mathematical time bomb waiting for the wrong amount of pressure. I want to pause this story right here for a second. I am speaking directly to every brilliant woman watching this who has ever been the silent engine behind someone else's success. Have you ever watched a mediocre manager take all the credit for your meticulous hard work simply because he spoke louder in the meeting or had a better suit? Go down to the comments right now and drop a floppy disk, SORA, or a blue heart to claim your digital power. Let the corporate world know that they might aim the PowerPoint presentation, but we own the code. And make sure you hit that subscribe button to join the Scars and Silk Network, because you need to see exactly how you take a devastating tech betrayal and turn it into a lethal system override. Back to the servers. Alex firmly believed he had successfully locked me out of the company. He didn't realize that I didn't need a stolen password to get back inside his digital fortress. I just needed to put an impossible amount of external pressure on his network. I needed to force his stolen engine to run so incredibly fast that it would accelerate straight into the blind spot he didn't even know existed. I wasn't going to hire a lawyer. I wasn't going to illegally hack his mainframe. I was going to mathematically force his billion-dollar algorithm to execute its own destruction. In the tech ecosystem, capital is power, but code is absolute law. I didn't waste a single second looking for an attorney to fight a billion-dollar corporate legal team. Instead, I bought 5 heavy-duty server racks, installed them directly in my living room, and went completely dark. For 6 agonizing weeks, I lived on black espresso and adrenaline, typing in the cold glow of my monitors until my fingers physically ached. I didn't rewrite the old algorithm, I evolved it. Free from the bloated, inefficient corporate infrastructure of Alex's company, I engineered a radically leaner, significantly more aggressive neural architecture. It was capable of processing complex predictive datasets 10 times faster than the version Alex had stolen from me. But here is the critical difference between an architect and a salesman. Alex wanted to charge enterprise clients $50,000 a month for a proprietary software license. I didn't want their money. I wanted Alex's absolute destruction. So I took my newly compiled, vastly superior predictive engine, packaged it into a pristine, easily integrated API, and uploaded the entire repository directly to GitHub. I didn't patent it. I didn't lock it behind a paywall. I made it completely open source. I made it absolutely free. In Silicon Valley, a corporation can spend hundreds of millions of dollars to outmarket a competitor. But you cannot mathematically outmarket free and structurally superior.
I anonymously dropped the GitHub link onto a few elite, highly encrypted developer forums, attaching a simple benchmark test that definitively proved my open source architecture outperformed Alex's flagship software by an astonishing magnitude. I didn't need a marketing department. The internet did the rest. Within 72 hours, the repository went violently viral. Thousands of senior developers at major Fortune 500 companies ran the benchmarks and immediately realized a terrifying truth. They were paying Alex's company millions of dollars a year for a clunky, outdated algorithm when the vastly upgraded version 2.0 was sitting online for zero cost. The enterprise contract cancellations hit Alex's company like a digital tsunami. Their monthly recurring revenue, MRR, didn't just dip, it catastrophically cratered. Major corporate clients began terminating their lucrative long-term subscriptions overnight, aggressively migrating their data streams to my open source platform. Alex was officially 2 weeks away from ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange for his $4 billion IPO. Now, his company was suddenly bleeding high-paying users faster than his customer service team could process the cancellation tickets. Wall Street analysts started asking lethal questions. The venture capitalists started violently panicking. Alex was cornered. To stop the massive corporate hemorrhage and save his precious IPO, he had to prove his software was still the fastest on the market. He had to force the stolen algorithm to process data at speeds it was never designed to handle just to compete with my new architecture. And by doing that, he walked straight into the mathematical trap I had set for him 3 years ago.
Panic is a highly destructive emotion, especially for a CEO who fundamentally doesn't understand his own product. With his $4 billion IPO rapidly disintegrating and investors furiously demanding answers, Alex was trapped in a glass cage of his own making. He gathered his newly appointed engineering team, a group of expensive Ivy League hires who had merely maintained my code but had absolutely no idea how it was actually constructed, and gave them a desperate, fatal directive. He ordered them to strip away the internal throttle limits. He commanded them to aggressively overclock the main servers to process data at 3 times their normal capacity, desperately trying to artificially match the blistering speed of my open source platform. The engineers hesitated. They warned him that pushing the architecture that hard without proper testing could destabilize the core matrix. But Alex, blinded by his own arrogance and the impending collapse of his wealth, threatened to fire the entire floor if they didn't push the update live immediately. He forced them to hit enter. Sitting in my dark living room miles away, I had a real-time analytics dashboard open on my monitor. I was quietly watching the global internet traffic. I knew the exact millisecond his engineers deployed the overclocking patch. When you force a complex neural network to aggressively ingest massive amounts of data beyond its designed limits, that data has to be perfectly routed or it violently collides. By stripping the stolen limits, they forced the stolen algorithm right into the mathematical blind spot, the ghost protocol I had specifically engineered years ago. Because I wasn't there to manually calibrate the load balancers, the massive tidal wave of incoming data had absolutely nowhere to go. It didn't just cause a temporary server lag. It triggered a catastrophic cascading architectural failure. The core predictive models violently collided with the user databases. The machine learning parameters began overriding themselves in an infinite, unstoppable loop. Within 4 minutes, the server temperatures in his underground facility spiked into the red zone. The automated failsafes desperately tried to reboot the system, but the core DNA of the algorithm was already mathematically eating itself alive. It wasn't a simple system crash. It was absolute digital corruption. I sat back in my chair, taking a slow sip of black espresso, watching the global latency charts violently flatline. Across Silicon Valley, thousands of Alex's remaining enterprise clients suddenly stared at blank, unresponsive screens. The multi-million-dollar predictive software they relied on completely evaporated into digital static. The entire billion-dollar network, the stolen foundation of Alex's entire empire, went completely, irreversibly dark. He didn't just crash a server. Driven by sheer panic and absolute technical ignorance, he had forced the machine to permanently delete its own brain. The financial fallout was instantaneous and absolutely merciless.
When a tech company's core infrastructure completely evaporates 2 weeks before its initial public offering, Wall Street doesn't just ask questions, they execute you. By 9 a.m. the following morning, the SEC officially suspended the IPO filing pending a massive federal audit. The venture capital firms, terrified of the catastrophic PR nightmare and the sudden loss of thousands of enterprise clients, violently pulled their remaining funding. The $4 billion valuation didn't just drop, it mathematically ceased to exist. That evening, the board of directors held an emergency midnight vote. Alex, the charismatic tech bro who had spent the last 5 years taking absolute credit for my genius, was unceremoniously stripped of his CEO title, stripped of his remaining equity, and aggressively escorted out of the glass building by the exact same corporate security guards he had used to exile me. But the absolute checkmate wasn't just his destruction. It was my acquisition. Thousands of massive corporate clients were suddenly left completely orphaned, their data streams severed by Alex's catastrophic system failure. They desperately needed a functional predictive architecture immediately to survive the fiscal quarter. And I was waiting right there to catch them. I updated my open source GitHub repository with a brand new, highly secure enterprise tier. I wasn't charging them $50,000 a month for a bloated, stolen algorithm. I charged them a fraction of that for premium direct API integration into a system that was 10 times faster and permanently stable. Within 48 hours, I had legally, mathematically absorbed the entire devastated customer base of his ruined empire into my own independent, self-sustaining digital infrastructure. I didn't need to sue him for my 4% equity. I simply took 100% of the market share. To every brilliant woman writing code in the dark, building the spreadsheets, or engineering the systems that keep these massive corporations alive, never forget who actually holds the power. They can put their names on the patent. They can stand on the brightly lit stage in their expensive turtlenecks and pitch the vision. They can even lock you out of the server row. But a salesman without an architect is just a man standing on an empty stage lying to investors. Never hand the keys of your intellectual empire to someone who only knows how to sell the machine, but fundamentally cannot build it. If this story woke you up today, do not keep it to yourself. Send this video to a woman in tech, in finance, or in business who needs a brutal reminder of her actual market value. Go down to the comments right now and drop a lightning bolt, so I know the architects are finally taking back the grid. And make sure you hit that subscribe button to join the Scars and Silk Empire, because we aren't just writing the code in the basement anymore. We own the mainframe.